All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Commitmas. Tonight we're discussing contributing to open source projects. We have Jonathan Donas, Jadon Bennett, and Dylan Ermet presenting. Just some quick show notes. You can join in on the conversation using the hashtag vBrownbag or the hashtag Commitmas, and you can find these episodes up on the GitHub repo. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan. And there you go.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so welcome to contributing to open source projects. My name is Jonathan Donas.
I'm Dylan Ermet.
I'm Jadon Bennett.
And we're going to be presenting this for you today. So our Twitter handles are @JohnDonas,
@Readme,
and @JSJBen.
Yeah, so if you guys want to give us any questions while we're doing this, or if you have any comments after the podcast, just let us know, and we'll be happy to answer them.
Or during the podcast.
Yeah, so this is us just about 30 minutes ago. Ready to do this? Okay, so our goal for you today is to get you started with the open source, get you started with your first open source project, okay? Now, we want to outline the process of contributing so that you can get it right the first time.
This is a learning experience.
All right. There we go. So, contrary to popular belief,
contributing has a low barrier to entry. Anything from reporting a bug to updating documentation is considered, or to coding a new feature is contribution. So that's all it takes to help out an open source project.
Yeah, you don't have to do a lot.
Yeah, so we want a recurring theme of this presentation to be find something, no matter how simple it is, and even if your contributions are not accepted the first time in terms of a pull request, keep going and find a new project because it's all about making your first commitment, and after that it gets a lot easier. So the easiest way to find something to contribute to: use the open source software.
Eventually, you'll find a feature or a bug, and you can either let other people know about it or try to fix it yourself. And if you do fix it yourself, it's really satisfying to see something you've implemented or fixed or changed in something that you're using.
Yeah, so this is something that we've done personally. A suggestion for finding projects to contribute to is to start local, and we mean in your city or your geographical area.
Yeah, 'cause a lot of the time there'll be somebody doing something.
Yeah, so for example, for the past half year almost, we've been contributing to a project for the city of Kamloops. That's in British Columbia, Canada. And we've been doing a garbage day project. So basically, we want to make an application where you can sign up for notifications and it'll email you a day before your garbage day. And it's a simple thing, and it's something that we're personally invested in because it's our city as well. And it was something that was easy for us to find in terms of something to contribute to. Now, first, you want to find small projects to contribute to. This is not a solid rule, but with small projects, people are more willing to work, I guess, a bit more closely with you in terms of giving you feedback on your pull requests, and also it's easier to not make as much mistakes, I guess, in terms of working around, fiddling with stuff, and eventually you can move on to bigger projects, and that's obviously the end goal here.
Some easy, quick places to find projects. There's GitHub Explorer, GitHub Showcases, and Designer News. You can also talk to people that you know in the coding community. They'll be able to help you, point you to a suitable project.
Yeah, for example, our good friend Jordan Rinke, he actually has been someone who's helped us a lot with finding open source projects that we can contribute to. And the fact that we can just call him up and say, hey, is there anything that we can work on? That's something that's really valuable. So we really encourage you to talk to people and ask them what they're working on and see if there's anything that you can help them with.
So one way to find projects is GitHub Trending. It's GitHub's place to find what's going on in the world of open source.
Yeah, so this here is an example of that. This was a screenshot taken earlier today. For example, you can find projects on making a cool resume, AWS, different things like Python, and of course you can scroll through this, find different projects that are currently popular and currently trending. And this is a great way to find stuff that is personally interesting too, because these are popular repositories that people are currently working on.
These trending repositories, they're often larger projects, so they might not be ideal for your first contribution, but they're certainly a good place to look.
Yeah, don't be discouraged if they seem intimidating.
There's GitHub Showcases. You can find repositories under specific categories. GitHub sorts them, and you can just search for categories that interest you.
Yeah, so this is another screenshot of the categories or showcases here. For example, if you're interested in Minecraft, I know my brother is, you can find projects that are going to work on that kind of thing. Also, Swift, if you're interested in iOS development. So these are, again, bigger projects that you might not necessarily want to dive into at first, but it's definitely a good place to look if you're trying to find something that you're interested in, because you can go directly into a category and find projects related to that category. Okay, and there's also designer news, and now this is another good place for, if you're interested in design, such as web design, another good place to find projects to work on. This is another screenshot here of designer news, and this is, again, a good place to find designing projects.
Yeah, there are a lot of sites like this. Like, I'm sure you've heard of Reddit, which has many different forums for finding new open source projects, and Hacker News and similar things. So look around.
There's an endless amount of places that you can go to find projects, and they don't necessarily have to be projects that you find on GitHub either. They can be just something else that's been posted online that you can find.
All right. Repos commonly have different types of informational files in them. There's a Readme, a license contributing file, and for larger files, you'll often find documentation and a wiki.
It's very important to read and understand these because they will save you time when you're initially contributing to a repository, and it'll also just save an overall amount of effort if you understand what you should be doing right from the get-go. Now, the README file, this is probably a very common file that you will find in most repositories, and it contains information about the project specifically. So, for example, the features of the project, installation instructions and dependencies, as well as the current development status, such as how far they have developed it so far, and also development goals, such as where they want to be by the time they finish developing this. So this is a great way to find out what the project is about and find out how you can get started with it right away and how this project is going to be moved forward in the future. So this is another screenshot of the Garbage Day, the BC Dev Exchange project that we mentioned earlier. This is the README, simple README. Explains some features, explains where we get the data from, and that's a screenshot of that.
All right, the license. It tells people how and you how they can and can't use the project. There's some very permissive licenses, and there's also very restrictive licenses. All the code is open source anyway, so obviously you have access to that, but there are limits as to what you can and can't do with it, such as like sell or stuff like that. There's a lot of license types, so it's important to read. Important to read them so you understand which ones you want. GitHub has an excellent page which outlines the restrictions of common licenses, and so you can choose which ones you want.
Yeah, so this here is a screenshot of the Apache license. There's many different types of licenses as well. For example, MIT has their own license. There's the Apache license here, and they all have little differences as well. So, for example, if you wanted to start your own project, you'd probably want to do some research as to which license you want to use to protect your code. And in general, when we're talking about open source projects, these licenses don't necessarily restrict the use of the code or the modification of the code because it is open source. It's just protecting the fact that you can't sell the software without permission, stuff like that. So you generally don't have to worry about modifying the code or contributing to it, but it's quite important to read these things and get a general idea about what you can and can't do.
Many projects will have a file in the root of the repository called contributing, and as the name implies, it's very important for a potential contributor. This file usually outlines how the owner or the majority of people who've contributed to the project would prefer that patches and features be contributed.
Yeah, so this includes a focus area for patches, how tests should be written, and also code syntax style. So again, this is very important as a code contributor to read because you want to make sure that from the get-go you are contributing code in a way that is easily mergeable and is not going to slow down you or the repository's owner when you're trying to merge code.
Documentation. Larger projects often contain a docs file or folder. This goes beyond a README to provide detailed instructions of how people can use the project and what the project is useful for.
All right, so find your issue. When you find a repo that you finally think you can contribute to, go to the issues for the repo. This is probably your first step, and find something that you're interested in and that matches your skill level. Okay, so there are two types of issues that you can create in general, two major types. The first type is a bug fix. So you could create an issue that says, okay, I'm going to fix this bug that I found, or I'm going to ask someone else to fix this bug that I found. There's also the new features issue. So you might call this a proposition issue. And this is where you're like, okay, this is a feature I'd like to see be done, or a feature that I would like to implement myself.
What's the issue? If you find a bug, even if it's beyond your ability to fix it, submit an issue for it. Always submit an issue if you find a bug. Make sure to provide some relevant info, such as what you were doing when it happened. If you were searching something and you got an error that really shouldn't have happened, be sure to report what you searched, that kind of thing. You're going to want log output you're going to want error output or log output as well.
All right, so this is a screenshot of the Garbage Day Issues tab for the Garbage Day project. As you can see, there's multiple issues here that we have not quite resolved yet, but if you're interested in finding an issue that you could work on, you could go to this page, scroll through, find something that suits your skill level, and you could start working on that. All right, now before you submit a bug issue, definitely want to check for duplicates. It's a waste of your time and the waste of the time for the owner of the repository if you create an issue that has already been mentioned. Next step would be to include details about the system you're using. For example, your operating system. Now, if you're using a web app, you might want to mention your browser. And you want to mention specific details like this when you're submitting a bug issue. You also want to be clear about what the expected outcomes are and in which ways they weren't met. So you want to really make sure that you give all the possible information that you can to make the troubleshooting of this bug much easier and also make the fix much quicker.
Now, one thing you want to keep in mind when you're trying to find a way to contribute is that you want to work on an issue that will challenge your skill level, but will still be something that you can possibly hope to complete. And
okay, so we realized that in previous podcasts they have already covered steps such as forking repo and all that stuff. So we just like to do a brief overview of this because it's still part of the contributing process. So the first step when you're contributing, so now we found our repo, and the first step in contributing to this project is forking it. This is when you're creating your own copy of the repo. You can obviously fiddle around with this all you want. It's not going to affect the original one. And eventually, our end goal is to make a pull request back to the original repo. So this is a screenshot of the main page for the Garbage Day repository. And you can see in the top right corner the fork button. Click on that. Got our handy little animation here, which I've always enjoyed. All right.
And then step 2 is clone your fork. It's just going to download your repo to the current machine so you can edit the files locally, and then you can make all the changes that's required.
Yeah, so again, we're going to not spend too much time on this because it already has been covered, but this is a screenshot of cloning a repo. And next you want to create a branch. Now, this is not always necessary all the time. For bigger projects and for a production environment, you definitely want to understand branching, and you want to make it part of your daily routine. But in general, when you're just working on a project personally, you don't need to branch. It's not necessary all the time. But essentially what you can do is you can create a development branch separate from your master, and you can make all your changes on your development branch and leave the master branch unchanged. And then when you're finished all your branches, you finished with all your changes, you merge the development branch back into the master branch, and it just creates a way for you to separate work and keep things from creating conflicts later on.
This is just a screenshot of GitHub letting you create a branch.
Yeah, so after that, step 3 is to make your changes. Now, this is obviously very important. You want to make a contribution here. And in our next example, we are reformatting some code to make it more readable. So this is a screenshot of just some before and after of some code contributions we made to the garbage day project.
The before was mine, the after is John's.
Yeah, so we reformatted that, just made it a little cleaner for this example here.
And then you're going to commit your changes. Git commit -m your commit message. There was another Commitmas stream which said not to do that, but we're not them. And if you watched that, you'd understand why.
Yeah, but we just like to outline that you can keep your commit messages relatively short. That's definitely something you want to do. And commit often, because you can always squash your commits. And so use your commits almost like you're saving your documents and saving your work. Okay, and the last step, second last step, is to push your changes. This pushes your changes to your forked repo, and the next step would be to open a pull request.
And here, you're requesting that the original repo pulls your code to their master branch. You're asking that they accept your updated or your changed code to the main repo.
Yeah, so here's another screenshot of creating a pull request. So that's the green button you click there. And now, before we get to that, that was just a brief overview of the process of making your first contribution. But now, next thing you need to do is often make necessary changes. Sometimes the owner of the repo says that, hey, you know what, your work is really good, but there's a couple little changes we want you to make. Maybe this code isn't formatted the way we'd like it to be. Now, don't be discouraged of this, because this is just, if for one, you're getting feedback from the repo's owner, that's awesome, because they're going to be telling you exactly what you need to do. So definitely make those changes and recommit them, because when you make the commits, it's going to automatically update your pull request. So keep in mind that you don't have to open a new pull request when you recommit. It's going to automatically be reflected in that.
You're going to want to keep things up to date. If you, when you create a pull request, there might be a merge conflict. When there is one, the owner of the repo is normally just going to brush you aside. They're not going to update, fix your code. So you're going to want to keep your fork up to date with the master, so that all your changes can just be easily implemented to the master.
Yeah, so you got to keep this in mind from the perspective of the owner of the repository. They don't want to have to be correcting all of your code just to make it mergeable with theirs. So you definitely want to make sure that keep things up to date, and you make sure that your code is mergeable to prevent any conflicts like this.
When you contribute to an open source project, you're going to need to stay updated. Yeah, you want to stay up to date with the project that you're working on. You can sign up for a mailing list if there's one. You can follow a blog dedicated to it, or join an IRC channel about it. You can watch it on GitHub if you want.
And fixing bugs and adding features isn't the only way to contribute. Something very important that a lot of people overlook is project documentation. There are thousands of open source projects that are severely lacking in this. And writing examples or adding new documentation is actually super helpful to an open source project. And you can do this, sometimes it's in the repo, or sometimes it's a wiki for the project. And these are both useful ways to help. Also, there are people who will need help online, and answering their questions is also useful.
Yeah, so continuing on that theme, You can additionally write tests for the code, add comments to the code. Now this is another way of documenting code, really, is to add comments, because for people who may have less experience, it's definitely useful to see what's happening in the code without having to necessarily go to documentation right away. And last but not least, you want to teach others and help them make their first contributions. Now, we all started out as beginners, and people helped us and guided us. So one of the best things we can do, especially in an open source setting, is to get other people started and help them with their first contributions.
Yeah, everyone was new at some point.
So again, a recurring theme in our podcast is that, hey, the internet is savage. Sometimes people will appreciate your contributions. Sometimes they're not going to. Now, don't be discouraged if, hey, the first time you submit something, they don't even respond to it and you never get a response, or they just flat out tell you, hey, we can't merge your code. Sometimes it just means that they weren't looking for code in the first place, or they weren't looking for contributions.
And their group of contributors may also be tightly knit. They may just only want people that they know. They're good friends, they're buddies, they're working together. So you don't want to be discouraged or feel down because like someone didn't want your work to be part of their project.
Yeah, and again, that's why we recommend finding projects that are located within your city or geographic region, or just finding smaller projects, because you're going to have a less chance of there being, I guess, a tightly knit community, because when people start out with their smaller projects, they always welcome help with that kind of thing. And we want to encourage you to improve and try again. It's definitely worth it, definitely worth the feeling of contributing to something big.
And our challenge to you is to contribute to your very first project. We want to see you out there and getting started.
Remember, your contribution can be as simple as updating documentation, or as large as submitting new code. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, there's never anything too small when you're contributing to something. All right, so in conclusion, we'd like to invite you to contribute to the BC Dev Exchange Garbage Day repo.
We definitely use the help.
Yeah, definitely use the help. If you guys want to take a look at that, that's a project we've been working on for almost half a year now. And we want to encourage you to make pull requests and stuff like that. We'll be able to review it and hopefully help you as well. So you can follow us on Twitter, @Donas,
Readme Ermet.
Not JSJPen.
Yeah, and of course, if you guys have any questions or comments about our podcast, definitely let us know. And yeah, that's our conclusion. So thank you guys very much for tuning in, and we hope you guys have a great evening.
Merry Commitmas.
Thanks, guys. That was great. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording now. But hold on, we may have. Okay, I thought we had a question, but
Not a one.
so let me go ahead and stop the recording.